I'd like to start with a chat now, but we're going to ask our sponsors to actually mention who they are, what they do at the end of the talk, and then we're also going to continue with the questions from the audience. So just going back to how it all started, I just want to introduce Justin, and it took me about 8 months to actually get Justin over here. We met in Melbourne at the APEC conference from Startup Grind with amazing speakers with Guy Kawasaki, and you were with him on stage, and it was just amazing to meet people like that. And I was just amazed that Justin was prepared to come to Coffs Harbour, and so thank you very much for coming.
It is my pleasure. As I said to a couple of you earlier, Startup Grind have been very generous to me over my journey. Derek, who founded it, has become a good mate, and they've been wonderfully supportive of Vinomofo and me personally. So whenever they say or ask, I usually try and make it happen.
And one of the key things for me was why Vinomofo, and so I'd like to ask Justin Dry, what to drink?
Yeah, good. Yeah.
What is actually the name and what it stands for? Because quite often people don't understand what the Vinomofo stands for, and originally it was actually a different name.
Yeah, so Vinomofo was the fourth iteration of the original idea. So we launched something called Coffs in 2006, something called Road to Vino. So Coffs was like a Facebook for wine. That was when Facebook was kind of taking off. And I was traveling through South America, really long story, I'll keep it short, but we brought back this kind of idea for Facebook for wine, and that was Coffs. Over Christmas, I decided that the next idea would be Road to Vino, which was buy a really shitty combi, do it up, travel around Australia surfing and drinking wine. Don't know where the business model was, but it was a whole fuck ton of fun. And then the third one was a mobile check-in app, which was called Great Australian Wine Adventure. And that happened, I was going to pitch at SA Tourism for some money to take Road to Vino, the travelling wine show, to South Australia. On the way there, excuse me, I was playing with these two apps. One was called Foursquare and the other was called GoWalla. I'm not sure if anyone remembers these, but these were the two that kind of created check-ins at locations, which is what Facebook and whatever else does now. And on the way there, I was like, oh, these are really cool. I'd like to bring this into the wine space. So there was time from being picked up to pitching for money for Road to Vino at SA Tourism. I created a new business, and I pitched this Great Australian Wine Adventure where you would check in, and it was an app that I'd apparently already built, and they doubled the money and said yes. And so then on the way home I had to find a developer to build the thing, and that was the third one. That went reasonably well, and then finally in 2011 we were going to launch, getting back to the name, something called Vino Mojo. Get your mojo working. So it was like, in hindsight, the three other businesses made complete sense to the eventual business, but at the time we thought each one was the one. So the first one was a Facebook of wine. We built this great audience of young kind of wine lovers that wanted to speak about wine in a different way. Then the second one, which was Road to Vino, was like building a network of rock star winemakers and the legends of the industry. We were getting drunk with them, sleeping on their couches, just getting to know them really well. So those two, then the check-in app kind of brought it together and introduced wine deals. So when you check in, the whole idea was you'd get a special offer. So we had the wine lovers, we had the producers, and then we had this kind of model of deals and offers. And so in 2010, Groupon was like the fastest growing company in the history of mankind, and we were like, well, that's a business model. And so we're like, all right, we've got the audience, we've got the producers, maybe if we brought that business model into it, and we launched it as Vino Mojo, that will work. And it did, obviously. 2 days out from launch, after doing a big kind of pre-campaign, we had a couple of thousand sign-ups. We built the social pages. We spent a little bit of money, didn't have a lot of money back then, but we'd spent all of our money on building the thing. 2 days out, on Friday, we were launching April 12th, I think it was, in 2011. On the Friday, we're just about to go home. Everything was ready, and we get this legal letter. It was like about this thick, and we'd never seen a letter that thick before. And it got handed to us, like it was actually hand delivered. And we were like, oh, this is either really exciting or really dangerous. And we opened it, and it was a cease and desist. It was a trademark attorney. And they were claiming that Vino Mojo was against a trademark that they had called Mojo Wines. Mojo Wines was a wine brand. Vino Mojo was an online retailer, different categories. This is all stuff I know in hindsight, but we called our really cheap solicitor, and he said, change your name. And so we're like, really? Maybe we can just call the guys and kind of let them know that we're not going to try and trade off their bullshit trademark. And so we called the guys, the CEO of a big public company. And we're like, hey, it's Justin from Mojo. We got this letter. Just want to know, we're a couple of young guys. We've got no money. He's like, I know. I'm like, okay. And how would you feel about? Let's just work this out. We don't think there's any confusion in the market. And he said, look, we've got really deep pockets. We know you don't have any money. We'll take you to court and we'll ruin you, basically. I was like, oh, you're a nice guy. And I hung up the phone and went, well, we're in trouble. We need to change the name. So we did what we always do when we have that kind of issue. We opened a couple of bottles of wine. And we started playing around with a new name, which was, we wanted to change it so little that we didn't have to change the design very much. So from Vino Mojo, we're like, oh, okay, so if we can just change one letter, that would be amazing. Because then our designer can go home, before midnight, and it won't be such a shock for everyone that's already signed up. And so we're like, all right, Vino Moto, and then after 2 bottles of wine, I said, why don't we call it Vinomofo for the motherfuckers that are trying to steal our mojo? So our company is one motherfucker. And we went, oh, we can't do that. And then we're like, can we? It'll be funny. And maybe when we win, we can change it back. And so we went, eventually, yeah, fuck it. It'll be a really funny story. We'll do it. We'll talk about it in the media. We'll do this big about me page. We'll tell the whole story about what a jackass that guy was. It'll be really funny. Did it. We launched. Our audience loved it. They started calling themselves mofos and mofettes. And we're like, cool. And it got such traction early that we decided not to change it. Anyway, so this public company, I'll shut up soon. This public company then continues to send us threatening letters about not ever trading with Vino Mojo, and we're like, we're not even doing it. Like, we're not even responding. Don't worry about it. And we started getting these huge files delivered to our office over 6 months, and then a year later, and my co-founder actually wanted to change the name back, and I was like, this is never going to happen because it's got such traction. But we get in these massive files. We had trading history back 8 years. I knew all their numbers, and we were like, we don't care. And eventually we stopped getting stuff. And then 2 years later, we got a letter saying, congratulations, you won your trademark. And so we now own Vinomofo and Vino Mojo.
Oh, wow. There you go. So what happened since then, and what's happening now? How many employees? How is it going?
So 2011 launched, it went pretty quickly. We started with, 2 guys in a garage. Within 6 months, we were negotiating a big media player buying 30% of us. We ended up selling 70% of our company to another company called Capture the Day. We bought it back a year later because it just didn't really fit. When we bought it back, it grew super fast again. That was 2013. We ended up winning the fastest growing tech company in Australia over a 3-year period. Our growth rates were 1,800%, nuts. And then in 2016, we raised some money, not because we needed it, because we've been profitable since day one, but because we wanted to take some money off the table. We raised at that stage what was one of the largest raises in Australia. It was 25 million. We took 15 of that off the table. We put 10 into the company. We're now in 3 countries, Singapore, New Zealand, Australia. We've got about 130 employees. Our headquarters are in Melbourne, and that is the quickest I've ever told that story.
It's great. 130 employees, and you were busy this week. You launched with Gary Vee, Honesty Wine, and
Empathy.
Empathy.
Oh. You've mentioned honesty a couple of times. It's empathy, yeah.
There you go. Empathy Wines, and just for some people might not know who Gary Vee is, tell us what it actually means for the Australian market and Asian market.
So Gary Vee, hands up who knows who Gary Vee is? About half. So for those that don't, Gary Vee started in the wine industry. That's how I know him, so not many people know that, but he's now like the most famous young business guy in the world. So he's like the new generation of like Richard Branson. He's the new generation of like a Tony Robbins type, kind of like motivational but very smart business guy. I met him about, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago. He was running his dad's wine store and then left and did a couple of his own wine projects about the same time as we were. He was doing this thing called Wine Library TV, which was like tasting wines online. We were doing the same thing with our first wine business called Coffs TV. We didn't actually know about each other until someone who watched both of our shows went, "Oh guys, do you know each other?" And we're like, "No." "Oh God, okay, you're the crazy American version of us." And he was like, "You're the fucking larrikin Aussie version of me." And so that's how we kind of first got to know each other. That would have been mid 2000s, I think, mid to late. He then went and started Vino Media, which is a big media agency now. They've got, I don't know, 1,000 employees. He's got like, he's huge. Basically, he's probably the most successful up and coming business guy in the world at the moment. And then after he'd built this big business, his clients are the biggest companies in the world. He's got an incredible network. He decided to get back into the wine industry. As one of his products, he's sold sneakers using his brand. He's sold other stuff using his brand. He decided to sell a wine. He created a wine called Empathy Wines with two of my other mates, one Trouty and the other one's Nate. They're all wine backgrounds. And so he launched Empathy Wines, which was a rosé, a white wine and a red wine coming out of California because he loves the wine industry. He wanted to get back into that space. And then because of his fan base around the world, which, you know, he's got like 6 or 7 million followers on Insta. He's got every video he ever produces is watched by like 100 million people. It's ridiculous. The scale is phenomenal. It's just mind blowing. And when he launched that wine brand, a lot of people in the markets that we service for Vinomofo wanted the wine. So he was like, "Oh, I'll use Justin for those markets because that's easy and I've known him for a long time and trust him, blah, blah, blah." And so we launched that. When did we launch that? A few months back. And as part of that, went to New York and filmed a whole bunch of content with him. And then that kind of resulted in a launch party. It's been a busy period. I'm lost days now, but it's I think it was on Sunday or Monday. Monday night. Yeah, Monday night in Melbourne, and I just invited 180 people. You know, kind of influencer type people that I like. I don't like influencers that are influencers for influencers' sake, but influencer people that I like, that are real, good humans. And then a whole bunch of people that had bought the wine went into a draw to win a ticket to come to it. And then just my friends and some media people that are my friends. And so we had this party. It was fucking epic. And we launched the wine in Australia. And, you know, people pay ridiculous amounts of money to hang out with Gary, and all the people that came to the party got a lot of time with him and they didn't have to pay a thing. So it was really fun.
Well done. Yeah, excellent. A nice story. And Startup Grind is not about the nice side, it's also to share the grind. And share with us also the stories about what it is that motivates you. How do you get motivated? Maybe do you have a routine in the morning, and what can you share with us? Some of them are startups, some of them are business people here. What do you do differently to have this exponential growth?
I'm not sure if it leads to exponential growth, but my morning routine is I actually do have a very set one. I've grown up reading and listening to kind of the people like Tony Robbins. I went to his island back a while ago and spent time there. That was amazing. And say what you will about him, and whether 20% of it's BS to you and 80% is good, or whatever that ratio is. I learned a lot of stuff from him. I learned a lot of stuff from reading about lots of people. I never had a mentor when I was younger. It wasn't really a thing. Startup communities weren't a thing when I was starting my business, really. It was, I feel that today there's so many opportunities to network and have a community like this, which is amazing, that we didn't have when I was starting. So for me, it was about making lots of mistakes and learning myself. I probably could have had mentors if I'd asked, but I didn't really think about it. I read lots of books. I've kind of I guess perfected what works for me now, and that involves, and you're going to think I'm crazy, but when I wake up in the morning, I will first thing I go and run or do something for exercise just to clear my head. Next, I'll have a cold shower. I'm one of those people that does cold showers, or like gets in the cryo chamber, or I'm one of those people that loves the coldness.
Your energy.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I love it. And also I'm a massive fan of saunas, but so I kind of go like super freezing, super hot, and then I have like some kind of like I have a vision board, and I have a process that I go through every morning, which is kind of talking to who I want to be and why, and then I have a coffee. Then I go to work, and then I've got a series of cards that I read every morning, which is just statements or mantras or quotes that kind of get me in the right way of thinking to, remove all ego and just get my mind thinking about what is the best outcome what is the outcome I'm trying to achieve, as opposed to letting ego get in the way. And so there's probably 10 to 20 cards that I read every morning that remind me who I want to be and what I'm doing it for.
Excellent. How is it to run a company with 130 people? There must be quite a lot of, issues and culture. And how do you motivate your staff? How do you go around, difficult conversations? And do you have any special recipe? Can you share anything on that?
People are hard. They really are. So I think when you start a business, and I've started a few businesses, and this one obviously got a bit large, and I think when you're starting, you're two people. We were two people in a garage. We didn't know what the fuck we were doing, to be honest. And as you employ more people and it grows, you start realizing how important people are. As two people in a garage, you are the culture of a business. And then as you add 5 or 10 or 15 more people, it becomes harder, because the conversations start happening outside of this little kind of tight circle, and then all of a sudden you're at 30 and 50 and 80, and you're like, holy shit, there's conversations happening all over the place that I'm not hearing, I'm not influencing. And so it becomes way harder to kind of maintain an incredible culture. And culture is such a difficult, evolving, changing thing, because it's humans. And when you get to 100 humans, or 50 humans, or even 30 humans, they're all going through shit. So they're going through, whether they're having issues in their personal relationships, if they're having health issues, if family are having trouble, or there's financial, there's so many things. And so you never get that point where you're like, oh, culture, we nailed it. It's like, oh, it feels good now, but fuck, there's going to be a whole bunch of shit that's happening today or tomorrow or next week that makes it really challenging. So I think the point I'm making is, it's so easy when you're starting, not in every other way, but when you're starting, it's so easy to feel and be the culture. It gets super fucking hard as you scale, and you realize more and more as you get bigger and with more experience that everything is people, and more of your time has to be spent on people. And from making plenty of mistakes, as everyone will, you realize that you have to invest as much time as you can on great people, because great people can make a business, average people can fucking destroy it. And as soon as you realize that you've made a mistake, you just have to deal with it, because too many people avoid hard conversations, and they know what the right decision is. They fucking know, and yet they don't do it. And that is like a cancer that grows within an organization, and so you've got to deal with it straight away. So our process of hiring has got way more complicated, but we were just stoked when people wanted to work for us. It's like at the start, when we were growing so fast, that like people would come to us and go, I'd love to work for you, and we're like, amazing, you're hired. And now, after dealing with a whole bunch of shit, you go, actually, we need to put a bit of a process around this and make it really hard to get a job, because if you just make it easy and you get a lot of people that don't make sense and don't fit within the culture, it's very hard to turn that around.
We have quite a lot of people in the audience. They are senior and very experienced advisors also from a leadership communication point of view, and I think it will resonate to quite a lot.
I saw a lot of nodding heads there.
Yeah. So in relation to growth and, from startup to a 130 employee size company, customers are extremely important. How important it is, or what do you do to delight the customer? Do you have any special ways to find out what the customers want? How do you go about it?
There's so much there. First, as a startup, I think, and as we launched in other countries as well, we'll show how much importance we put on it. Building a community of customers, mofos, whatever you want to call yours. It has always been for us like one-on-one. It's always been build a community from one-on-one. So like hold events, get to know them, build great relationships and brand ambassadors, and it kind of takes care of itself. And so we started Vino in a garage, and so we were holding these events and getting to like tasting events and anything we could to just connect and be really close with our community. And then they would tell their friends, and then our events got big, so big that we couldn't fit them in that one place. And then it's I think Seth Godin talks about getting your first 100 or your first 10 or your first 1,000. He changes all the time depending on the business, but it's about getting those first 100, say, or for us 1,000. We called them foundation members, and so those foundation members we just loved to death. Like we did everything we possibly could. We handwrote Christmas cards for the first 5 years. Like I literally spent a week, and I my hand hurts holding this mic because of the damage that was done during these years of handwriting cards. It's super powerful, but we've done it again and again, and we've in new markets, so same with New Zealand, same with Singapore. I was once walking through a hawker hall in Singapore. It was like 2 years ago or something, and this guy runs up to me and goes, "Justin, you're JD from Vinomofo." I was like, "Hey, this is cool, recognised, awesome, Singapore." And he's like, "My grandparents love you." And I was like, "Really?" And he's like, "Yeah, they're massive mofos." I'm like, "Oh, amazing. They've got your Christmas card up on their fridge." I'm like, "Really?" And they're like, "Yeah," and they show everyone. And so I hand wrote Christmas cards to everyone who joined Vinomofo in Singapore the first 2 years, and like proper, like not just like signed it. I wrote cards, and it took me forever. But they're up on pin boards, they're on fridges, and the power of that, every single person that went to the grandparents' house was introduced to Vinomofo and Justin Dry, and the fact that I handwrote a Christmas card to them. So that's how we built our audience. We just went all in on love and all in on treating everyone as well as we fucking could.
And you continue to do that. So you continue to listen to your customers, you run surveys, you're still reading the responses?
Yes, I read, oh my God. So we did a survey, when was that? 4 months ago. You mentioned it, so you must have got it, I think. But like 4 or 5 months ago, and I asked 10 questions. What do you like? So the first one was like a NPS kind of score, so like rate us, just so I could have like a point that I could work, like a metric that I could work to, and I was going to add 4 other metrics to that to work out a Mofo happiness index. Anyway, the other 9 questions were like, what do you love about us? What do you hate about us? That kind of thing. I read every single one. We had 6,500 responses to 10 questions. I read every single one of those fucking things. That was, just to do the maths for you, that was 65,000 answers. That's how much I care about knowing, and you get to know what you're doing well and what you're not doing well by reading all those things. And was it an incredible amount of time to invest in it? Absolutely, but it was absolutely worth it.
There you go. We've done a bit of a background test on Vinomofo.
Shit.
I don't know if you know, but one of our sponsors actually bought 2 dozens of cases, and
I research very seriously.
Good. Can I get some wine?
There's actually some local wine waiting in the room for you.
Ah, good.
so I'll let Neil talk about it later on when he talks about the sponsorship, what his experience was, but I can let you know it was positive, very positive.
Yeah. Always nervous when you do those things, yeah.
Yeah, we want to make sure that you are fit income when you come here. You know? And however,
it's all...
to challenge the wine industry, which is really competitive, and the big retailers, how do you figure out, or how do you find out that you can actually survive in this industry?
I'm going to be very sensible because there's a camera on, and I've learned the hard way to not say anything too stupid, which I have done many times before. But there's a couple of big competitors in the wine space. They're not very nice. That's all I'll say. And they have tried to make it very, very hard for us by doing very naughty things. And so we've had many challenging moments in the early days when we started doing really well. But it's led to the best things as well. This is so funny that it just happens that way. So we had a couple, I won't name names so I can talk about it. We had some big players that would find out what we were posting on the day, because we started as a deal a day, so one deal every day. And obviously now have hundreds, but like one deal every day. When we would post the one deal through our relationships with the producers, our friends, the legends and rock stars of the industry that we'd met through Road to Vino and all those other things, it was the shittiest offer to winemakers, honestly. We were going, so, we're really good mates. We want to sell your wine for a price that's never been sold before. We can't guarantee how many we're going to sell. And do you mind sending them out for us? Shit offer. And the only reason we got it was because we had such great relationships with them. And so they were like, okay. And then so we did it. We put these deals up. And then some big people would then call the producers and say, if you don't pull that down, I will pull all your wines off our shelves. Completely illegal. And these producers, who were our dear friends, would be ruined if all that stock was put off their shelves. So they would call us crying. They would call us in absolute distress. And because we were so close to them, we would pull deals down. Like, we would literally pull deals down because we didn't want to ruin our friends' and families' businesses. Good thing, it led to realizing we could do 2 deals a day and double revenue, which was nice. But what it made us realize is we had to scale so big that we had to get scale so we could be so big that when we did an offer, we could buy enough from them directly, not make them send it out. We got our own warehouse quick enough. But we would buy so much that when the big guys said, we're going to pull your stuff off the shelves, they could back to the big guys. And that's where we got to. And then it's so funny. So then they kept putting pressure on, and we're like, how do we get back to the people that it still matters to? Like, how do we get back to the people that can still feel the pressure to not deal with us? So then we came up with what was called the secret deal. And what we wouldn't post what the wine was. We would do like a hidden bottle wrapped up in something, and we'd say it's 97 points by James Halliday, it's from McLaren Vale, it's a Shiraz, it's all these things, and we'd do a little tasting note, but it wouldn't be enough for anyone to know what it was. But they trusted us that it would be great because we're such a curated business. We reject 95% of all the wines we taste, so it's top 5%. So they trusted us, and so they'd buy it, not knowing what the hell it was. And that meant those big competitors wouldn't know what it was either. And so then it led to this, what we call the fuck me moment, because it would be a secret deal, and they'd rock up and they'd open it and go, holy fuck, because it was so good at such a great price. And so because of the competitors forcing us to do a secret deal, that ended up being 70% of our business, secret deals, and they triple sold anything else because of the excitement around it. We had whole forums built online to work out what the fucking thing was. And so it built all this like virality around it because they were like so excited about it, until those competitors started buying the secret deals, which they did, and they're some of our best customers to this day.
That's amazing. Well done. I think one of our sponsors did buy the secret deal, and I was very delighted. So Neil will share the story later on. If you can give a bit of advice, and you would think of Justin being back 18, 20, would you do it again? Would you go your path you went and being an entrepreneur? Or do you have any advice back to Justin when you were young?
Yes. Lots of advice for Justin as an 18-year-old. what would be the key ones? I would realise that just get started, because that's 99.9% of the battle. People think that they need to get shit perfect, and it's so much easier, better to just launch and learn. It's a term my team hates this term because I use it all the time. It's progress over perfection. So just get it fucking out, get it out the door, try it, test it, launch it, and then evolve as you learn from the market. So probably that. Don't be scared, just fucking launch it and learn. That's way better than trying to get it perfect. I would say that is one of the key takeaways. I'd say. 2, people are everything. Like, invest in people, find great people. If it's not the right person, deal with it straight away, which we touched on before. What else?
How important is your personal life, physical exercise, and you have to look after yourself. And
I'd also probably warn me and everyone that's going through that kind of first initial journey that it doesn't get easier. It actually just does not get easier. You just get better at dealing with it. So the things that I deal with now, with 130 people in 3 countries and all sorts of crazy pressures, would probably have killed me 10 years ago, to be honest. Now I'm okay. And the stuff that I lost sleep over, 10 years ago, whatever, doesn't mean anything, because your capacity to deal with shit gets so much better, and that's just experience. So if you think this, you go, I'm going to work really hard for 2 years and then fucking retire, it's not the truth, and the reality is it's really hard, and it continues to be really hard, but the benefit and the excitement and the rewards are obviously far greater. So it's yes, it's going to be fun and you're going to have some really amazing times, but holy shit, there's going to be some really dark and some really lonely and some really hard times, and it just doesn't stop. Because, and the further you get and the more success you have and I guess the more recognition you have, the lonelier it gets. It really does. It's no joke. It does. And in the early days, you'll probably find, depending on your circle, which I absolutely 100% think you should curate fucking hard, will support you in the early days. Then they'll be a little bit confused by the next stage. And then when you're really successful or starting to get some success, about 80 or 90% of them will try and tear you the fuck down, because that's what Australians do, unfortunately. And so you've got to get the right people around you that don't do that. So, and surround yourself with a great positive group. And unfortunately, that's just the way it happens.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Justin. I think this was really wise words, and I'm quite amazed about the caliber of entrepreneur to have here. And I would like to open the stage and ask questions from the audience. I'm sure you have prepared, or you have some ad hoc questions. So if you have any questions to Justin, and I see there's a hand from a youngster.
Good, because I really hate that uncomfortable silence when everyone's like, I don't want to.
Here we go. Can you pass the mic, please?
Hello, how are you going?
Good, man. How are you?
Thank you. I was just wondering, what are the chances of moving to Melbourne, starting business and internship, hopefully in Melbourne, Monash or MIT? I was just wondering, what were the chances of working with you and starting?
You sneaky fucker. No, it's certainly ambitious, and I'd love to go, you're hired, but I'm smarter than that these days. Let's talk after. So I'll help you wherever I can, I promise. You sneaky. It's good though, I like it. It's very forward, I love it. We will chat after though.
You talked a little bit about scaling, which is famously difficult to do. What are some of the things that you think people should think about when they're starting to scale?
Okay, so touched on before, getting the people right. You need the right people, and I think when you start, the right people for the right jobs, it changes over time. So when you're early, you need generalists. As you grow, you need specialists. And so that shift is really hard to get right, and it's heartbreaking too, because the people that have been with you from the start, and that you care about deeply, and in some instances, some of your closest friends, like I had, were amazing and committed and spent so many hours doing what they needed to do to help us get to where we wanted to be. They weren't the right people later on, and it's one of those really awful, yucky, but you can do it in a beautiful way, but it's just a reality that the people that got you there aren't necessarily the people who are going to take you to that next stage. So probably being okay with that and realising that people are so important is one of the big things. What else? Scale. Scale is hard in pretty much every way. And you're going to learn a lot of things while you're scaling that you wouldn't necessarily think. What you imagine it's going to turn out like is often nothing like what it actually turns out like. So this, and you're going to have, especially if you're raising money or you've got people like that are more conservative or traditional that are around you, they're going to go, oh, we need to see your 3-year business plan or your fucking 3-year budget. I mean, are you kidding me? Like, our budget changes every 3 months. You know what I mean? Like, the only time we've ever done a budget or a business plan was when we were raising money. So I think probably being aware of that and the people side would be the two things. And I could probably talk an hour on the scaling thing, but I'm happy to chat to you after.
Wine snobs and your scoring scheme. Years ago I went to my first gallery opening. I'm a burnt out diesel fitter, know nothing about art. So I rang up my articulate sister. We've been invited to a gallery opening. How am I going to survive? And she said, you'll be fine, but whatever you do, don't say, I don't know anything about art, but I know what I like.
Yeah.
To me, that was the most honest, basic statement.
Absolutely.
And getting back to your wines, your scores, no doubt in the wine industry, there's wine snobs, and a particular winery may be working for 100 years. They might have had a terrible year, but they've got the brand. Your scoring, I'm assuming now your scoring is in-house and independent. How do you get on the wine snobs?
Okay, so we curate our range, so we reject 95% of the wine, so that's kind of our scoring. We only sell wines we love, that's part of our brand. The scores that you'll see on our site, like 97, 98 points, are all done independently of us. We use them as reference points, so it's not in-house at all. So we reject like most of the wine we taste, even the stuff that's high pointed, just because part of our brand is we curate, and we curate because we are premium to super premium wine. So the top kind of 2,000 or 3,000 wineries in Australia we'll look at, we choose 5% of that wine, and the wine that we choose, that 5% is because we love it, not about a score. We reject a lot of wine that's got really high scores. Sorry?
Thanks for the honesty. I was wondering how when a wine snob will say this is a great wine, simply because that's what a wine snob says.
Yeah. Well, this is why we started the brand. So the foundation story of our brand, which is no bow ties, no BS around wine, be super passionate but don't be a wanker, is basically the brand story. And where that came from was my ancestors planted some of the first vines in the Barossa. So we've got they're like 140 years old, incredible old gnarly Shiraz vines, beautiful. I studied wine at uni. My uncles work in the wine space. My uncle is a super famous viticulturist, travels all over the world, writes all the textbooks, taught me at uni as I was studying wine. Then I worked in the wine industry. I was working at wine stores. I was holding tastings for people all over the place. And by the time I was like 25, 26, I didn't have an 18th birthday. I used all that money and bought one bottle of wine. This is how much I loved wine. And so by the time I was like 25, I knew more about wine than most 25-year-olds. Like, there was plenty of people older than me that knew way more than me, but as a 25-year-old, I knew a lot for a 25-year-old. And as you know a lot about wine, you become a bit of a wine nerd, which is not a wine wanker, it's just someone super interested in wine. You go to a lot of independent stores, you're out searching for like more interesting, kind of more bleeding edge stuff or more traditional kind of homeland wine stuff, so whether it's white Burgundies or Barolos or Barbarescos, just wine nerdy stuff. I would walk into these independent wine stores and knowing that I knew a fair bit as a 25-year-old, and there'd be this old guy with like a shirt on and a fucking bow tie and like rosy cheeks because he drank too much, and his whole self-worth was based on making you feel like a piece of shit because you didn't know as much as him. And I remember walking in going, I know a lot, and I feel intimidated. And I'm like, that is rubbish. Can you imagine how everyone else feels? And so that's where that no bow ties, no BS, let's be wine nerds and passionate but not a wanker comes from. So I don't really align with that part of the market. Being called one motherfucker helps because they don't. If you're offended by a company that's called that, you're probably not our people, and that's probably the wine wanker. Yeah.
Thanks.
What is your favourite wine?
Okay.
As I walk.
I love Italian red wine. I love Barbaresco and Barolo, which is from northwest Italy in a region called Piemonte, and it's also the home of truffle, which is lovely. So that's probably red, European style, and I love Burgundy, which is like white Burgundy, like Chardonnay. And then in Australia, Chardonnay and Pinot is like just love. I mean, I love all wine, to be honest. I go into a wine bar now. I haven't picked a wine off a wine bar list for years because I go in and I trust the som or I trust whoever's down. It's like, just freak me out. Like, just give me the weirdest, most wonderful, interesting, crazy wine you can find, because I think that's way more fascinating. I've had a million Chardonnays, I've had a million Pinots, a million Shiraz. I'd rather just get my head blown away by something interesting now.
What are your current challenges, and what are you doing about that? And is anything about the future of wine, innovation of wine?
Sorry, the future of wine.
Wine, yeah. What is the innovation?
Oh, okay, cool.
What is the next level of?
So current challenges at the moment,
So a senior person that's really important to the business is leaving. That's a challenge, but an opportunity at the same time. You can see how I reframe all of my challenges. What's great about this? So that's what I do. So she's leaving. She's been incredibly important. That's a big challenge at the moment, but we'll find someone amazing. New Zealand's a little bit hard at the moment. It's a market that we've been in for a couple of years. Singapore's flying. Australia's doing really well. New Zealand's harder. It's a different market. They're more reliant on discount and low prices, and that's not what we do. We don't do super low prices. We do like heavily discounted wines, but they're premium. So to enter the market at that price point, which is more fast-moving consumable goods than wine, I'm not super pumped about, and so New Zealand's a little bit challenging. So people, a market, are probably the biggest challenges. Future of wine at the moment, everyone's kind of talking about natural, biodynamic, funky kind of wines, and I love them as well. You know, some are terrible because they're faulty as fuck, but others are amazing because they're interesting and done well, and biodynamic's been around forever. Fascinatingly, like the biggest trend at the moment, which I only discovered because I stayed up until 2 a.m. searching Google Trends, like on the weekend, like a week or two ago, vegan wines are phenomenally successful. Like vegan's the thing at the moment, and everyone's talking about natty or natural wines and biodynamic, but vegan's like 5 times the size, at least, maybe 10. So that's pretty interesting. And not many people realise that. And you know, a lot of wine retailers don't even kind of tag wines with that description, which is very silly because people are looking for it. So veganism in wine is huge.
Vegan gin. There you go.
You were saying to just jump, don't worry about the details. How do you do that and not piss off so many customers that they never come back again?
Well, so it's not jump when you're completely shit. It's, you know, it's like, it's just don't. I explained that badly, my fault, not yours. I think a lot of people get to a point where it's a good product and don't launch because they want it waiting to get it perfect. I'm not saying launch with shit. I'm saying like get to a decent level and launch. Don't let yourself get into this mindset where you have to wait for perfection to launch is the point. Because I think there's one, your perfect is not other people's perfect. And two, whatever you launch will never end up looking like what you thought it was. was going to look like. Do you know what I mean? Like the end product will never look like what you thought it was. So getting stuck on getting the first product right and perfect is pointless, because it's not going to be the fucking product you end up winning with. Get it?
Okay, so there's no problem changing your brand as you go?
No, I don't think so. No, I changed my brand 4 times.
Clearly.
And so I don't think there is. That's more a lesson around, I talk to so many people and they're talking about like a line here or a button here or a colour or a whatever, and I'm like, it doesn't fucking matter. Like, it's the core of the product that counts, you know? And so don't worry about if it's pink or green or orange or blue. Like, just fucking launch it and learn, because you're going to learn so much other stuff that's so much more important than a fucking blue or orange button, is what I'm trying to say.
Just back on, I don't need you to go into details with the person that you're losing, this lady, but we're going through that as a company now. Just someone that we started the business with, is a dear friend and really good at what she does. She's had to leave the business after 5 or 6 years. And we've only just sort of found that out, and so we're battling that now with a massive hole and quite a big role.
Yeah.
For you, do you see that, do you go into that scenario to try and replace that person, that role, or do you see it as an opportunity to do something completely different and look at the business differently?
Second one. So it's such a good topic of conversation, because it's so raw for me right now, because it's this literally happened 2 weeks ago for me, and so super important. Probably my right hand woman in the business, like super important, does so much great work for us. And what I've now spent my time looking at is not, oh shit, I need a replacement for that person. It's like, how would I structure this business if I had no restrictions? Like, what would this look like now that there is all these gaps that I can now build out exactly what I want? So that's how I look at it. So the structure is changing, and we're actually lifting one person up. Super excited for him to step into that role, because he's going to like leap ahead a couple of years of what he normally would. So I'm like pumped for him. And then there's a new role, which will be a lower level role, but still senior enough. And then there will be someone who grabs a little chunk of her work into her role. And it leaves a beautiful gap and opportunity for a lot of people on the team. So I wouldn't, like, your instant thing is to go, oh shit, I need someone to replace that person. But I reckon you go, cool, whiteboard. What would this look like with no restrictions, and I have all the opportunities in the world?
Hi Justin, Jeremy. I think like a lot of people, so much of what you said tonight certainly resonated. You talk about stages and scaling. Obviously there was a stage in the earlier days where that was 10, 15, 20 people that you had to sort of let go of the wearing all the hats, making all the calls.
Greatest moment of my life.
Yeah, I suppose, go more towards that visionary part of it and get that integrator, that general manager. What stage was that for you, and any tips of going through that process?
Yeah, I love this topic as well. I think everyone feels the pressure to be to have to be good at everything. Especially when you start it yourself, and there's so much pressure to go. Like, I used to think I had to be good at copy, I had to be good at the design, I had to be good at business and accounting and finance, and I had to be good at understanding scale ups and marketing. Like, you just have that pressure to do all things, and I think once you can go away from that to move to what you're good at, is the most freeing and beautiful moment. But you've got to emotionally, I think, prepare for it, because you still, me personally, I'm not sure about for everyone else, but I still have this, I still had it, I'm completely over it now. I still had this thing where I felt like I was failing if I wasn't good at everything. And you know what? I'm shit at stuff, and I don't give a fuck anymore. But I'm really good at stuff, and I love it. And so, but that took me a while to get to that point, because you feel like you have to hold and balance and control everything, or you're going to look like an idiot, or to admit that you're not good at stuff is scary. But the quicker you do it, the quicker you realise that you're human, and other people do too, and they'll appreciate it. No one cares. Like, no one cares about what you're shit at, as long as you're good at some stuff, And so I think one of the great moments for me was going, I don't have to be good at I can be great at 2 or 3 things, and I'm going to spend all my time doing that, and I'm going to hire all my weaknesses around me. And you are so much better, so much quicker, so much more powerful when you do that. And so one of the things we did, and we do for our entire teams, is a strengths finder kind of test. There's the Gallup Institute does one, and it's like, work out what you're good at. And I'm good at strategic, big picture. What I'm terrible at is detail. So I'm like awful at it, and I hate it. But yet I'll spend 8 hours a day working on detail back in the day because I thought I needed to get ahead. You know, I hire people now that can do that 8 hours of work in about 30 minutes. And is it better for me to spend 8 hours doing what I'm good at, or 8 hours of stuff I'm terrible at? You know, and so I think it was the most freeing thing in the world. So
how long did it take you to recognise that and to make that call?
Well, I'm 41 now, so probably like 40 years. No. Like it took me 3 or 4 when it was really scaling, because I'd had other businesses that had done well before, but never ones that relied on a big team. So I still had to do things, and I didn't ever realise until later in hindsight why I hated some of the stuff I had to do, and I realise now it was because I sucked at it. And whereas when you scale a team, you have the ability to hire around you great people, and there's just moments where you're like, oh, thank fuck, that person's amazing at that, and they love it. And I'm like, I hate it, and I suck at it. So you go, all right, I'm just going to play in this space now. And it gets even more and more powerful as you like elevate up and allow yourself to just do the absolute things, like the 1 or 2 things. And so I reckon I started with, have to do everything. Oh, actually, I can hand that off, that's way cool. And then this next one was like, oh shit, no, I've got to focus on my strengths. Went all in on that. And then the final evolution of that has been, I'm only doing 2 things, because that's the only things I'm really good at and I love doing. And when you hit that moment, fucking peak happiness. Yeah.
Hi, Justin. Sarah. I wanted to talk to you about, or ask you about technology. Obviously, you sell wine, but technology is what gets your products to your customers. And I know lots of businesses have gone through a pretty rough journey with scaling and learning about technology. You know about wine, but it's a whole new world. So, you know, what were the lessons that you learned, and how do you keep ahead of the technology game?
First site was built by my cousin, and we got him after hours from his main job before he went to bed, if he didn't have anything to do that night. So we had the worst, slowest site in the world when we started. And when it was so funny, when it went down, our first site went down, and we're like, oh my God, it's down, it's crashed. And we're like, there's probably only 2 people on it. What does it really matter? So then we built probably 3 or 4 websites ourselves, so we custom built them. And so the really powerful learnings through the technology kind of phases. So we were the generation of the custom built website, so probably, 6-10 years ago, everyone was building their own. And so what happens then is you need generalists, and they're not specialists, so they're not great at anything, but they're good enough to hack together a site. And then what happened was we did that for 2 or 3 times because businesses like ours needed to be customized to us. Then what happened was the platform generation came in, which is the Magentas and the Shopify's and the whatever else's, and they got you like 80 or 90% of the way there. And so us being custom built and with all this spaghetti code, old school, hard, holding it together just barely, and then adding on little things and thinking, oh my God, this is just a nightmare, but we can't stop and start again because it's too much, it's too connected. We try and fix this and shit on the other side of the planet would break. So we just kept kind of holding it together. Then the platform generation came in, and because we were always leading because we built ourselves, we're like the young digital wine guys, we're fucking leading the industry. And then the platform generation came in and everyone leapfrogged us and got to like 80-90% of the way there, and 80-90% of the way there was so much better than where we were with custom. Oh, this is shit, but we can't change it. What do we do? So we just kept fixing and building on top of it. Finally, we stopped about a year ago and went, we need to fix this now because we are miles behind. The only thing that's keeping us going is our deals and our brand and our customer experience, but the technology sucks. So we stopped and we've gone to full headless e-com, which is like the next generation after platform. So we're leapfrogging everyone again. And what headless e-commerce means, you just build the front end and you plug in all the best things through API. So what we will do now is the thinking, first custom built, generalist, not good at anything. Platform generation was 700 developers or 1,000 developers, all not in our team, in the platforms that you use, working on one product. Amazing. The next generation of technology is headless e-com, which is you plug in the best of everything. So you get the best e-com platform, you get the best email platform, you get the best CRM platform, you get the best stock platform, you get the best warehousing solution, and you plug them all in through an API layer and you build a front end. And so basically you've got 700 or 1,000 developers working on warehousing solution, 1,000 developers working on email solution, and it is phenomenal. And so we're about to launch in about 4 weeks. We've progressively done it, and the site is like blindingly fast. I could get all nerdy and tell you more details, but I won't, because I'll probably lose half of you. But it's like blindingly fast. It's almost disturbingly fast. So, you know, like there's sites that are disturbingly slow, and then this is like disturbingly fast. You click it and you're like, poof, and it's done. You're like, did something happen? And that's where we're going. And so I'm not actually sure that we might need to slow it down, honestly, because if people are like, what the fuck? You lose that path of sale. You know, the whole thing about e-com is not getting in the way, being frictionless. And when you're slow, there's plenty of friction. When you've got a shit cart, there's plenty of friction, all those things. When you're too fast, that people are like, you're like, is that friction as well? So we're going to test that. I'm not even sure. And I'm legitimately telling you the truth here. I'm thinking that our site might be too fast when we launch it.
So you're saying you started off, you had heaps of businesses, and I just made the stupid decision to start another business as well, but it's like a service-based business because I love it. It's not really scalable yet, but I enjoy doing it, but I've just added a whole new workload. Probably two questions is, maybe three, am I crazy?
Probably.
What kind of personality do you think you need to be able to juggle that many things? And then, you know, if the pattern continues, what's next for you?
Are you crazy? Probably. What kind of personality, and I'm the same though, what kind of personality do you need to juggle a lot of things? Probably not mine. I'm way better if I focus. And I've invested and tried others. I started a food business a couple of years ago while I was doing Vino. I've invested in like 30 or 40 companies, and my food business got to like 2 million rev, and then I shut it down. Just wasn't getting I'm not good at splitting my attention. I need to go like all in and super deep, and I'm a big believer in not micromanaging, empowering all your people, but knowing enough to be dangerous. Like, so when they're having conversations with you, they can't pull the wool over your eyes. So you need to know enough about each part of your business to go have a decent conversation, but also realize that they're better than you at it to empower them. So I need to go deep into things. And when we started Vino, we were running 4 businesses, and we shut them all down when Vino got traction, because I need to be that focused kind of guy. So 1, are you crazy? Yes, but so am I, so that's cool. 2, not my personality to handle lots of different things. So everything is so much harder and deeper and more time than you can ever imagine. You know what I mean? So doing like multiple businesses is really fucking hard. But then plenty of people disagree with me, and this is just one man's opinion. And what was the third thing?
What's next?
I'll be doing Vino for a while. I've invested in quite a few companies through that journey. When I took some money off the table, I just went and sprayed and prayed in lots of different investments, and probably like 1 in 10 worked. But that 1 in 10 worked really well, and it paid for all the mistakes. So I don't know. I think it'll either be launching in America for Vino, or we'll go vertically integrated into Australia and New Zealand. Like we might, I don't know, buy some wineries. We might. I'm not sure yet, to be honest. But it's going to be a 3 to 5 year journey. Is the next kind of time frame I'm thinking with Vino. I mean, it's either going to be another global market or vertically integrated is kind of the thinking at the moment. And then after that, I'm having a baby in December, so I'm going to take 2 months off, which is amazing. But after that kind of period of time, I don't know. I talk to my wife and I'm like, I'd love some time off. And, she's in 20 seconds later, it's like, you'll last about fucking 4 weeks. And which is true. I've been starting businesses since I was a kid. You know, my first business was at 10, you know, and I did another one at 14, and like, it's just in me. I can't not do stuff. So something, I'm not sure. That was the longest answer of saying nothing ever, wasn't it?
So, thank you, Justin. And can you please put your hands together for Justin? And thank you very much.